Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Penn State 365 podcast. My name is Dylan Callan Crowley. I'm joined by my co-host Anthony Azan and Marty Leap. Back at it today to recap Penn State's Week 1 win over West Virginia, a 38-15 win for the Nittany Lions under the lights of Beaver Stadium. Over 110,000 people packed Beaver Stadium on Saturday night to watch the Nittany Lions really dominate for the most part. I think that's what the box score really tells about this game. It may not have felt like it for Penn State fans. It wasn't the prettiest of games out of the Nittany Lions, but at the end of the day, when you look around the Big Ten, it was certainly one of the more impressive efforts in the Big Ten, if not the entire country, in Week 1. I'll start with Anthony. Anthony, you were in Beaver Stadium watching the game Saturday night. As I was in the press box, you were in the stands. What's your initial thoughts about the game before we get into the nitty gritty?
Yeah, it was a fun game to watch. I think it went about how I expected it to go. First half was, fairly close. Some things that they had to clean up going into the locker room. For it was 14-7 at halftime. Obviously, we'll get into stuff such as like the kicking miscues and the run defense, for example. But went into halftime, made some nice adjustments, came back out in the second half, took care of business, and yeah, it was a great atmosphere, a fun game to watch, and I'm glad we walked out of there with a pretty convincing win, all things considered, and reversed the backdoor cover, which was fantastic as well.
Penn State did get the cover in the game thanks to a touchdown in the final 10 seconds by Bo Perbula. We'll talk more about that later. That was a little bit uh, to the ire of Neil Brown. But like I said, we'll talk about that. Penn State in the game outgained West Virginia 478 to 308. But really, if you guys think about it, West Virginia, their final touchdown of the game came against Penn State's second string, which obviously it still counts. But if you're looking at Penn State's core defense, they allowed, I think, just over 230 yards of total offense in this game. A great sign, all things considered. Marty, what was your thoughts on the Nittany Lions season opening win? Just your initial thoughts here, quickly.
Yeah, it kind of went similar to what I thought. Like Anthony said, closed and they put away. I said on our preview episode last week, I could see this being similar to the Auburn game last year, closed for a half or so, and then Penn State wins it going away, and that's exactly what happened. Yeah, all things considered, a good win. You start the year against a Power Five team, a Power Five team that probably has the second best offensive line you're going to face all year with a coach on the hot seat, desperate for a win. There were a lot of things there working in not necessarily West Virginia's favor, but they're going to scream, hey, they're going to go down swinging here. And that's what they did. But to Penn State's credit, they weathered that. They came out and won the game by 23. And honestly, anyone who watched that game will tell you it was not as close to the final score. Penn State was a lot more than 23 points better than West Virginia on Saturday night.
Yeah, I feel like it's fair to say that one of the themes of Saturday's game for Penn State, despite the win, was missed opportunities. Nittany Lions, of course, missed two field goal attempts, both by Sanders Sahadak, but also three trips deep into West Virginia territory. All three may have been in the red zone. I'm not exactly sure off the top of my head where all three ended up, but three drives deep into West Virginia territory that did not end up in touchdowns that easily could have been touchdowns. So, I mean, this game ended 38 15. It easily could have been in the 50s for Penn State. So, I mean, West Virginia, to a degree, probably lucky it wasn't worse than it actually was. But that's how it goes. Penn State, didn't play a perfect game. There's a lot of things for the Nittany Lions to clean up this week, going into this second week of the season. Um, I think it's fair to say, though, the star of the game for the Nittany Lions was none other than the quarterback, Drew Alar. Let's see what his final stats were here. 21 for 29, 325 yards, three touchdowns for the sophomore out of Medina, Ohio. Just what a phenomenal, not debut, but debut as a starter. It was his first career start under the lights of Beaver Stadium, national TV. The lights could not have been brighter. I mean, I guess really, if West Virginia was a top 25 team, maybe, but the lights really couldn't have been brighter for Drew, and he came out and he immediately made his presence known for Penn State on the offensive side of the ball. 4 plays into the Nittany Lions season offensively, he finds Keandre Lambert-Smith going across the downfield across the middle for a 72-yard touchdown. Anthony, like we said, you were there. The crowd was pretty electric right after that play.
Oh yeah, it could not have been a better start for Drew and that offense. I mean, the hype was already building up to a crescendo for Drew going into that first drive, and then he hits that bomb to DeAndre Lambert Smith. Not only does he hit that bomb, but he steps up in the pocket, goes through his progressions,
Yeah,
on the run, fires a 40-yard dot,
yeah,
past the diving defender right into the hands of Keandre Lambert Smith, who we'll talk about more as well
yeah.
because he was fantastic as well in this game. But
And
I mean, you couldn't have asked for anything better, and it just really set the tone for the rest of the game for Drew. I think just getting past that first drive, getting that first big touchdown really helped him settle in. And yeah, the crowd went nuts, and I was going nuts right there with it. It was fantastic.
Yeah, and our viewers below on YouTube can see below the stats that some of Penn State's key players in this one posted. We mentioned Keandre Lambert-Smith. KLS in this game was phenomenal. 4 receptions, 123 yards, 2 touchdowns. And he could have had even more yards. I mean, we'll talk about some of the other missed opportunities, and we're not going to go too in depth on this one today just because we're a few days later on it because of the holiday weekend. But Drew in the third quarter, I believe it was, not missed, but he had a little bit of a poor throw, one of his poor throws on the evening to KLS on a slant that KLS could not handle. If KLS handles that pass, he's going 60, 70 yards for the touchdown. Yeah, so I mean, Drew, you really could not ask for much more. Marty, what's your thoughts on Drew's first career start?
Yeah, you mentioned the stats are phenomenal, and he was better than the stats. Or there's that poor throw to Lambert Smith in the third quarter that you referenced, which even it wasn't a great throw by Drew, but it still should have been caught. And even if it's
Yep.
caught at the first down and moves the chains, that takes away an incompletion. There was a drop by Dante Cephas in the fourth quarter that would have been an easy walk-in touchdown
Yep.
if he caught it. So, I mean, those two plays right there easily takes him to, if they're caught, 4 touchdowns, if not 5, pushing 400 yards. Yeah, it just I remember watching the game Saturday night. I had a group of people over watching the game in my house, and my wife came down the steps into the basement, and she came over to me, and I just like grabbed her, and she looked at me, and I'm like, "This is him." She's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Drew Lar is the quarterback I've been waiting on my entire life at Penn State." And she just got like disgusted and walked away. But yeah, like he's the guy. All the tools are there. That first touchdown throw to Keandre Lambert Smith. There aren't a lot of quarterbacks on this planet, college or NFL, who are going to make that throw. There was a throw to Trey Wallace, I want to
Yeah.
say in the second quarter on a
Yeah.
third down where he stepped up in the pocket and hit him across the middle for like 17 yards. That again, most quarterbacks on this planet don't make that throw. Drew has the tools to be so incredibly special, and they were on
Yeah.
full display on Saturday night. And if you're a Penn State fan, it's hard not to be so excited about this because you went into this game, I think, expecting the running game to carry the offense, and it didn't. And it didn't need to.
Yeah.
Like it didn't need to because Drew Lar was just dissecting West
Yeah.
Virginia's defense. So yeah, it's hard not to be over the top ecstatic about Drew in this passing game coming out of that one.
And I think what's really important to kind of remember about this game is the offensive line play for Penn State in the passing game was not great. The Hunter Norzad, Saeem Morley, Caden Wallace really all kind of struggled in this one. Norzad, it's kind of understandable. First career start at center. That West Virginia defense did have a couple nice defensive tackles as well. But if you're Penn State, that right side of the offensive line was the weakness last year. It remained the weakness in week one, and that's going to be something to watch as we're going forward this season. Whether that means Drew Shelton, Vega, Ione potentially stepping into the tackle and guard positions. We'll see what happens, but those will be definitely 2 spots to watch on the offensive line heading into the rest of the season. Um, we'll talk a little bit more, Drew, as we progress through this. Kind of, we'll somewhat go through this chronologically, not spend too much time. Um, I think the important thing to know: Penn State defense in the first half here was good, but by no means great. There was a lot of missed tackles. They West Virginia, as Curtis Jacobs said, and I believe Kobe King also said, West Virginia threw a lot of things at them in this first half on Saturday that Penn State did not prepare for. So they were doing a lot of things on the fly in terms of adjustments, and that happens. But as that game progressed, and the game got into the second half, the Nittany Lions defense I thought settled down quite well. There was much less mistakes in the second half, fewer missed tackles. I mean, the tackling will have to absolutely get better going forward. PFF had Penn State with 12 missed tackles in the game. They can't miss 12 tackles against the likes of Michigan and Ohio State this year. They can't. If they do that, they're going to lose. But the defense in the first half, I think, definitely wasn't pretty, but it still got the job done for the most part. The first two drives for West Virginia, 19 and 15 yards respectively over 11 plays. It wasn't until the third drive in which was, one that you just kind of have to tip your cap to West Virginia on. Garrett Green, their quarterback, who James Franklin was very, speaking very highly of in the post game, had a great individual effort play in which he extended for a first down or got to third and short. It was a great third down run by him that got the chains moving for West Virginia. And then a couple plays later, maybe the next play, Devin Carter, former Penn State transfer portal commitment, got wide open deep into Penn State territory, which got West Virginia down all the way to the 11-yard line. Those two plays, I think, made up almost half of West Virginia's offense in the first quarter, if not more. I guess that first half of defense, were you guys concerned at all, or just how was your feelings overall? Because I mean, from my point of view, it wasn't pretty, but I also felt like Penn State's defense still was finding ways to make plays when needed, and they did get lucky sometimes, but they were finding the ways to make the plays that they needed to make. Marty, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, I can't say I was concerned. I do think, if I have any concerns about the defense coming out of this game, it continues to be the defensive tackle room, which we talked about a lot in the offseason, but I still think you get Kezia Izzard back. That goes a long way there. Jordan Vandenberg had a really good game. I thought Hakeem Beamon really struggled, and I don't expect Beamon to struggle to the extent he did, week in and week out. So,
and it's worth noting that was a very good offensive line they went up against. A very difficult one to face in week one.
Yeah, other than Michigan, this is the best offensive line we'll see all year. Yeah, this is the second best offensive line they will see this year.
And I do think the rush defense is a concern. But also, I would also say C.J. Donaldson is probably one of the tougher running backs they'll face this year, just in terms of that size and power that he brings.
I agree. I think other than Michigan, that's the best offensive line they'll face. Other than Michigan and Ohio State, is probably the best running back they'll face. It wasn't a good match for week one. And you throw in the fact that Abdul Carter had probably the worst game of his career, and you don't expect that to be the norm, obviously. It was just kind of the perfect storm. But to their credit, the defense didn't play great. And like you said, Dylan, earlier in the show, the starting defense only gave up 7 points. Yep. So you'll take that. You will take that for week one. And, a lot of the tackling stuff, I think you can even attest that too. In camp, you're not going to hit your own quarterback. You're not going to tackle your own running backs. There's a lot of, set up, pull up, but don't actually tackle the guy. I think that's a big factor. So I'm not super worried about the defense moving forward. I still think they're going to be a great unit. I thought the secondary played extremely well. I thought the defensive ends played extremely well. I thought the DTs left something to be desired. But again, you get Kezia Izzard back. I think that changes things there. And linebacker wasn't great, but you don't expect Abdul Carter to play poor and miss tackles every week. I mean, if Abdul Carter simply tackles better, which is what you expect to be the norm, you probably feel a lot differently about the linebacker group and the defense coming out of this game. So while there are some questions about the defense coming out of this game, I'm not worried about it. I still think this unit can be one of the best in the country this year.
Anthony, what's your thoughts on the defense here?
Yeah, no, I agree with what Marty said. I think West Virginia's offensive line is the second best offensive line they're going to face all year. I think CJ Donaldson was a really quality running back. And yeah, I think Zach Stewart, the center specifically, is a legitimate All American candidate. I mean, he did a really good job handling the interior of that defense.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
Wyatt Millum is an all Big 12 caliber left tackle. So yeah, I think it was a good test for this defense. I think the standard is so high that it's so easy to nitpick a lot of things. And it's understandable because you have to clean those things up if you want to beat teams like Michigan and Ohio State. So I get it and I agree with it. But it really is kind of like a first world problem because this is a really, really good defense. And it's
Yeah.
just something to make that jump from being a good defense to a great defense. And yeah, this week they were more good than they were great, and they have things to clean up, and that's okay. But I think West Virginia did a really good job in the first half of not of taking advantage of Penn State's aggressiveness.
Sure.
Penn State's, I think they caught them over pursuing quite a bit,
Yep.
and
Yep.
especially when you have a dual threat quarterback like Garrett Green, they were able to kind of slip through those pursuits and get yards with their legs in those situations. And
I
I think
agree.
Penn State needs to do a better job with the run defense. So I think in the second half they made some good adjustments at halftime, and they came out in the second half and didn't try to over pursue as much. They kind of just tried to contain more than to over pursue, and I think they were able to keep him more in the pocket, and that's the reason why they really didn't score much in the second half outside of garbage time. So yeah, things to clean up, but at the end of the day they only gave up 7 points with their first team defense all
Yep.
game, and that was really due to a blown coverage by Dom DeLuca. So at the end of the day, you really can't complain about too much. They just gotta, look at the film and get better.
Yeah. Penn State did.
Here's my
Go
thing
ahead.
with the defense. Sorry,
No,
Dylan, to
you're
cut
good.
you
You're
off.
good.
Do you really think this defense is going to be tested again until they go to Columbus in the middle of October?
Probably not.
Yeah, I mean, I know Illinois was the game we kind of circled as a trap game, but like, dude, Illinois was lucky to beat
The-
Toledo on Saturday. So, like,
Yeah,
this defense is not going to get tested again until they go to Columbus.
Eh,
Month plus from now. So they have plenty of time to get healthy. They have plenty of time, like you said, Anthony, to iron things out. They'll be okay. They'll be
And
okay.
and
Randy Diaz is really good.
I think what helps the defense this year, and I'm not saying it to the point that they can be, um, for lack of a better word, negligent out there, but Penn State this year, like based off of, and it's week one, but based off what we saw out of this offense this week, until they face a maybe a Michigan, I don't know who can stop this Penn State offense consistently enough to stay in games with. Like the only team that can beat this Penn State offense most weeks, in my opinion, is Penn State themselves, with stupidity and turnovers and bad mistakes. That's the only people that I think right now can stop this Penn State offense. I know it's only 1 week, but the poise we saw out of Drew this week for his first career start, his ability to climb the pocket, all of it is well beyond what not any, but a lot of sophomore quarterbacks can do. I mean, as we're recording this, we're watching the Clemson Duke game. Cade Klubnik is going up against an albeit good defense in Duke, but Drew looked miles better than Cade does in this game.
yeah. I mean, I'll give Cade a little bit of slack. Drew also was facing a much worse defense than what he's currently facing.
Sure, but a lot of the
I
little
agree.
things that I saw Drew do on Saturday, I'm not seeing the same little things out of Cade right now. And now it's only 1 week, but it's just an example because Cade was a guy who had a really good, when he had a great ACC championship game last year, and he's still going to be a great quarterback. But it just shows how advanced Drew is in his game right now. I mean, outside of Shador Sanders, if Shador Sanders doesn't put up the numbers he did this week, Drew's probably being talked about way more on a national level right now.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I still think Illinois can, in Champaign, we'll give them a little bit of a test. I know that they, almost lost to Toledo, but I still think Illinois is going to be a game that we have to watch out for. And obviously Iowa always has a good defense, so I think Iowa will be a good test for where Drew really is. If Drew goes off against Iowa, I know it's at home, so you have that advantage, but if he has a good game in that game, then yeah, I'm really gonna start to think that I know he's a good quarterback right now, but I'll really start to think he's an elite quarterback.
But my point is with Drew and this offense and the defense is this defense this year. Last year, it felt like Penn State's defense needed to play almost perfect sometimes, especially when the offenses were going through ruts. But the offense was going through ruts. But I don't see this offense going through extended ruts like they did last year. They may have a drive, two drives in which they don't score, but I think Penn State scored, I believe. Let me look at it here. Penn State had a TD rate of 50%, scoring drives on 60% of their drives on Saturday. I think 60% is probably where Penn State's going to sit most of the season. More times than not, they're scoring offensively, and I think that's going to help the defense a lot this year. Maybe help them play looser as well, and that'll help against those teams like Ohio State and Michigan, where you don't feel like, hey, if we give up a touchdown here, I'm not sure if our offense can come back. Now, that may not have been always the case last year because that offense last year was pretty good, but I think the point still stands. Going back to defense, I think their biggest issue really on Saturday as a whole, was just 2 3-and-outs. They could never get off the field quickly, it felt, on Saturday. I mean, you look at West Virginia's drives, 6, 5, 9, 8, then they had 3, 3, 14, 7, 10. If they can get those 3-and-outs a little bit more going forward, I mean, it's only going to set up more success for this offense, obviously. But I think that's really the biggest thing, too, is just getting off the field a little bit quicker than they did on Saturday. Because some of those West Virginia drives did feel like they probably should have ended a little bit sooner. But because of either the West Virginia run game or Garrett Green or over pursuing the ball, Penn State just struggled to get off the field on those initial set of downs. But then after that initial set of downs, they seemingly calmed down most of the time. Any other thoughts on the defense as a whole?
No, I was just gonna say your 3-and-out thing. I think a lot of that too can go back to just game one.
True. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
You weren't facing. I think you look at this defense a lot differently after one game. If you flip the schedule, and they had played Delaware this past weekend and West Virginia this upcoming weekend.
Yeah.
Like, WVU is not a good team.
No.
But they're still a Power 5 conference team that's probably going to win 3 to 5 games, maybe 6, and go to a bowl. That's still a team that you don't expect to just completely bludgeon. And, I predicted 41-14 is the final score. Final score is 38-15, so pretty close to what I had anticipated. Like, that was a team that I don't know. I think it went about as best as you could anticipate, and especially as we've gotten into, and we'll get into, they left a lot of points on the field too.
Yeah.
So I think I agree with you what you're saying about the defense to get off the field better, but I also think as you get this defense kind of tuned in more, you start facing the Delawares of the world, and even like Iowa. Is Iowa's offense better than West Virginia? I don't know if you guys watched Iowa and Utah State at all. I watched some of that, and good God, that offense is still just disgustingly terrible.
Yeah.
I'm not. I think this West Virginia team, if they play, put it this way, if West Virginia plays throughout the season the way they played on Saturday, they probably are going to get to a bowl game and push some teams to the Big 12. I don't think this West Virginia team is quite as bad as we anticipated. It's a damn good offensive line, as we've said. I think Garrett Green can do some things at quarterback. Their defense played better than I anticipated. So there's definitely some things there to work with. But yeah, I think moving forward, you get into the groove of the season, you play a non-Power 5 opponent in non-conference, and you can really start to clean some things up as you get into that trip to Illinois, Iowa, home, that sort of thing.
Sure, and like I said, I may have said earlier, all things considered, we're really nitpicking here at what we're at the issues here. I mean, this is a defense that's not really going to be tested until Ohio State. The rest, I mean, no offense that they face before Ohio State should test them, and if they do, there is major issues on the defensive side of the ball and the Ohio State game. Well, I mean, Ohio State didn't look great this week, but I don't think that's going to be what they look like all year. But Um, if Penn State's defense is tested before Ohio State, there's issues well beyond uh, what we are currently thinking about. Um, no, but overall, the first half defense, I think it would be best to be graded as almost like a B plus type defense. But then that second half defense, or a B plus, and that second half defense though, I think was much more of that A plus defense that we expected out of Penn State on Saturday night. Um, After West Virginia scored a touchdown in that uh, at the end of that first quarter, it was a turnover on downs, a punt, back to back turnover on downs before they finally scored a touchdown on their second to last drive against Penn State's second team defense. The defense absolutely played phenomenal, especially in that second half. And when it mattered, they did get off the field, and that's what's most important. Um, let's talk about the offense because that's where definitely more of the bigger questions are. Not bigger questions. Special teams are where the questions are. But let's talk about the offense. Penn State, we talked about that initial drive. Keandre Lambert-Smith comes out not with that 72-yard reception from Drew to start things. Nick Singleton would get on the board in the second quarter with his first touchdown. The rushing attack wasn't, great for it was good for Penn State. It wasn't explosive is the word I'm looking for. 35 for 146, two touchdowns, averaged 4.2 yards per carry. But Singleton and Allen both averaged over 5 yards per carry. Singleton had 70 yards and 13 carries. Allen had 51 on 10. I don't know about you guys, but if I'm a Penn State fan, I'm not concerned about that rushing attack. It wasn't an explosive day. Not every day is going to be explosive, but at the end of the day, your two bell cows got the job done. They moved the chains.
No, I 100% agree with you. I think West Virginia had the right strategy going into this game. Their strategy was we're going to key in on the run, we're going to sell out against it, and we're going to hope that Drew Aller isn't up to the task or can't handle the pressure that we bring to him. And, for the most part, I think that they did a good job of stopping the run. Like obviously, Singleton and Allen still had solid days, all things considered, still moved the ball, still moved the chains pretty well, but they didn't break off that big run. And if
Yep.
you're West Virginia, if you told Neil Brown before the game that those would be their stat lines, but they wouldn't have any huge runs, he would have absolutely taken it. So I'll give them credit where credit is due. They did a really good job of defending the run, but
Yep.
they just didn't count on Drew being as good as he was, and that's really why they had no chance in this game.
Yeah. After that second touchdown drive, which again, Penn State's first one was explosive. I mean, 4 plays, 94 yards. That second touchdown drive, 10 plays, 81 yards over 5 minutes. And I think those two drives really show that this Penn State offense can be explosive and score at will. But also, if Penn State needs to go out there, say it's the fourth quarter, you're up 7-0 against a Michigan, 7-0. You're up 7 on a team like Michigan. You need one of those longer drives, perhaps. Penn State can get it done in both ways, and they showed that against West Virginia. But after that second touchdown drive, their next two drives are where the major concerns come in. I mean, West Virginia had a turnover on downs in that second quarter, which gave Penn State the ball at their own 43-yard line. They'd get it all the way to West Virginia's 21, so right on the edge of field goal range. And Sanders Sahadak would miss what I believe was a 38-yard field goal. It was a field goal he absolutely should have made. He missed it to the right. Penn State obviously comes back out in the next drive and starts from their 29, gets all the way down to West Virginia's 17. James Franklin sends Sahadak back out there, and Sahadak once again kicks it and misses to the right on back-to-back drives. I mean, at that point, he had to go to Alex Falcons. We saw Falcons in the second half. He did make a field goal, but if there's a big negative coming out of Saturday, it is the special teams, but especially that place kicking. Now, Falcons and what he had to do looked fine, but if Penn State can't make anything longer than a chip shot this year, again, none of their games should come down to chip shots, but chip shots may end up being the decider between Penn State and Michigan or Penn State and Ohio State. So, I mean, I know Marty was talking about special teams as a unit, but field goals and place kicking especially being a big question mark and concern for him. So Marty, let's start with you on this one. Just where are you with place kicking, Sanders Sahadak, Alex Falcons, and all that?
Not in a good place, that's for certain. We talked all offseason how kicking and punting was a major question on this team. And Saturday night, for as well as they played for the most part against West Virginia, place kicking and punting was ugly. I can live. It's college football. I don't expect the kickers to be great. I can live with kickers who are going to consistently hit within 40.
Sure.
And you don't have that right now. So I'm hoping moving forward you just ride Alex Falcons because nothing against Sanders Hadak, but man, if you can't hit two easy kicks from within 35 yards or whatever it was at home, yeah, that's not good. That's not good at all.
And
And
James
my
Franklin,
theory is,
go
and
ahead.
I said this. No, I'm sorry. I was just
No,
gonna say
you're
I
good. You're
said
good.
this in the summer. I could see a scenario where this team misses going to Indianapolis. They miss the playoff, whatever it might be, because of a missed kick in a
Sure.
close game. And after this game Saturday night, like man, you don't feel any better about that. And
Sure.
so yeah, it just if Alex Falcons is going to consistently hit his extra points and consistently hit kicks within 40, give him the job because I think one thing that gets overlooked a lot with place kickers is your A ball isn't always what's most important.
Sure.
What a lot of times can be most important is avoiding those terrible misses, and that's something Zahadak did not do on Saturday night. Sure, Sanders Zahadak might have that 50-plus yard field goal in him, but if he can't hit within 40 yards with regularity, he can't be the kicker. He just can't.
Sure. Absolutely.
So if you feel like Falcons is going to hit those kicks within 40 yards of regularity, give him the job. It was frustrating to watch. I mean, thankfully, it didn't come back to bite them.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, it was one thing in my house is kind of the running joke is the first f bomb of the football season that my wife has to reel me in on, and the first one was when Sahadak missed that second kick, and I came real close to dropping it. But yeah, man, it was frustrating to watch. Give that job to Alex Falcons at this point. Again, nothing against Sanders Sahadak, but there's no reason for him to be the first kicker out there this Saturday against Delaware.
Sure, and James Franklin said in the post-game press conference that I mean he didn't think those two, and they weren't. He didn't think those two kicks were challenging or especially long kicks. Those were kicks that you should make, and in a kicking competition that was so close this off season that it wasn't really decided until this week who was going to get the start, or this past week who was going to get the start. That he had to go to Falcons basically at that point because of those two misses. Those are just two that you really cannot miss if you're Sanders Sahadak. And I agree that I think Falcons has to be that kicker next week. Now, I think if Falcons, gets two good kicks in, perhaps maybe in the second half you give Sanders Sahadak some opportunities if they arise, just to see what he can do in a little bit of a lower pressure game. But it's definitely still a concern for Penn State. Luckily, they would not miss any more field goals on Saturday. Alex Falcons would make one later in the game. Penn State only had one 3-and-out in this game, only two punts. Riley Thompson did shank one punt. His other punt was pretty decent. Any concerns about Riley Thompson after one game? I mean, if he comes back next week against Delaware and punts well, if he has to punt at all, I wouldn't be shocked if he doesn't. Or comes back against is Illinois week 3? Yeah, Illinois week three.
Yeah.
Illinois week 3. If he punts well on that, I think you may just chop that first punt up as nerves punting it in front of your new fan base and all that. But any concerns for either of you on the Riley Thompson? I mean, Anthony, we didn't talk to you about the field goals. Any concern? What's your thoughts on the field goal? Anything to add to what Marty said? And then give me your Riley Thompson thoughts as well.
Yeah, I'll start with the punter. I mean, he only had 2 punts. The
Yeah.
second one, like you said, was fine. Like, it wasn't a good night for him by any stretch, but I feel like I haven't seen enough to really, say, if I'm concerned about it or not. So, to be determined on the punter.
Honestly, it's one of
But
those things with Riley Thompson when he first shanked that first punt. You it was a little weird. I didn't know how to react to like a Penn State punter actually shanking something after the last like 6 years of having elite punting.
yeah,
Uh,
it's been a while. We've been spoiled with Blake Gillikin and Jordan Stout, and even Barney Moore to some extent was really solid as well. So yeah, we've
yeah,
been spoiled. So we'll see, to be determined. But I'm not really too worried about it at the moment.
yeah.
Talk to me after next week or maybe the Illinois game. But for the kicker, it was actually pretty funny in the crowd. So Marty, I don't know if you saw this at all on TV, but at the halftime, and part of the halftime show, they brought like one of the fans out onto the field to try to kick a field goal for
Yeah.
money. And let's just say there were a lot of people in the crowd that if he would have made that kick, they wanted Franklin to run on field with a scholarship and put him in pads and get him kicking. Unfortunately, he did not make the kick.
But
But
I
I
mean,
remember looking at
he just missed it. I believe it went
yeah,
just off the upright.
I remember looking at my friend next to me and I said to him, "Don't worry, buddy. You're not doing any worse than our kickers right now. So don't feel too bad about yourself." But yeah, I mean, it was definitely concerning with the kicking. With Sahadak, it was tough because they weren't bad misses. He just pushed them right, but it kind of annoyed me that there was no adjustment. He missed them in the exact same spot in the exact same way,
Yeah,
and you kind of would want to see him make that adjustment. Okay, so I hooked it right. I'm not a kicking guy, so I really don't know like how that works, but you'd like to see that in-game adjustment, and that didn't happen. So that's what's the most concerning for me.
yeah,
But you know, I do agree with you that it would be good to get him some reps in the Delaware game if possible. Obviously, if you think Falcons can be your
yeah.
guy, get him out there to start. I think he made his kicks. Sahadak didn't. He's probably earned the right to start against Delaware. But yeah, you want to get both guys at least to a point of confidence in themselves, to try to get them back on the right track. So
Absolutely. And
See,
good.
one thing I will disagree with you, Anthony, but them not being bad kicks. When they're that short of kicks, that's a bad miss. That's a bad
yeah,
miss.
it
So
is.
I will again not a super kicking guy, but like my oldest son is the kicker for our junior high team, so I know more about kicking than I probably need to know just from helping him over the years. And you just there, and I just remember him coming down into the base and watching the second best. He's like, "Dad, I would make that kick in my sleep." I'm like, "I have no doubt you would." Like it wasn't good. There are adjustments you can make. There, like you said, there were no adjustments made, and that's what's frustrating. So, I don't know. I just think to me, moving forward against Delaware, you give Falcons all the reps. I think he right now you view him as kicker one, and you've got to get that figured out because the last thing you want to do is go into maybe not Illinois or Iowa because you're probably okay, but when you play Ohio State next month, you don't want to go in there without kicker situated. So I think for now you give Falcons the reps, but yeah, those were two just absolutely brutal misses by Sahadak and two misses that just cannot happen.
Sure. All right. Any thoughts on Riley Thompson?
I
No.
already gave my thoughts on Riley
Uh,
Thompson.
well, you did.
One shank. I also agree. I think he'll be okay.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can. I mean, he was a freshman All American at Florida Atlantic.
The
Had one
sophomore
bad
with
punt
one
to
year of
start.
eligibility left. It's
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
hilarious.
One bad punt to start. Second punt was perfectly fine. I think he'll be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. After that, really, there's. I mean, Penn State's offense cruised in that second half. Four straight scoring drives that close out the game. 3 touchdowns, a field goal by Alex Felkins. The last touchdown scored by the second team unit. Just so we have it out there. Keandre Lambert Smith had his second touchdown of the game on what was a beautiful, by the way, crossing route that he ran into the back of the end zone. Drew just threw a beautiful rainbow pass to him. There was nobody around. Um, it felt like Drew almost may have put a little bit too much under it, but it still, was a touchdown. That's all that matters. Falcons had that 25-yard field goal. Malik McClain, somebody that we haven't talked about today. We didn't talk about Trey Wallace either, so let's quickly mention those two. Uh, Stats are below, but uh, Harrison Wallace led the team with 7 receptions, 72 yards. KLS, of course, had 4 for 123 and 2 touchdowns. But Malik McClain, somebody we didn't really hear a ton about in camp, but we all obviously knew since he transferred from Florida State. 4 receptions, 58 yards, and 1 touchdown in that game. That's a really nice debut for Malik McClain, maybe potentially emerging as that third wide receiver for Penn State this year. I mean, he has the size, he has the speed, and he was breaking some tackles as well on Saturday night. I was impressed by what we saw out of Malik McClain.
Yeah, I was waiting for us to get to the wide receivers because I feel like that was the one group that, at least on offense, that we had a lot of question marks about. And I feel very, very good about our wide receivers moving forward after game one. I know West Virginia doesn't have the most stout secondary in the world, so maybe it's not the best litmus test, but I thought they went in, they did their job really well. Obviously, KLS has that, game-breaking, big play potential.
I said I wasn't sure if any Penn State player was going to get beyond 500 yards this year. KLS is already at 123. I mean, he may have 500 by the end of the month.
Yeah, no, he feels like he could potentially be that legit wide receiver one we were hoping he could become.
For the record, I don't think he's going to do that, but if he does this every week, he surely will.
Yeah, no, but beyond him, like I was more impressed with the guys beyond him as well. So Harrison Wallace, like you said, I think he's gonna be a great compliment to Keandre Lambert-Smith. Malik McClain was the surprise of the night. I thought Liam Clifford played really well on that touchdown throw to McClain.
He looked explosive a couple times.
Yeah, he looks explosive. He was great in blocking too. That touchdown to Malik McClain. Liam Clifford set that up with a really nice block downfield. So I think Liam Clifford's a guy that's going to be really dependable, and this fan base is really going to learn to like him. So, Cephas had that nice catch. Obviously, he dropped that touchdown. So it was, a little bit of good, a little bit of bad.
Trey
I think
Wallace
he'll get there.
also dropped a touchdown, back-to-back plays for Penn State. And that was one of the other missed opportunities, was those
as well. Yes. So things to clean up still for the receivers, and that's fine. But I think you could definitely see an improvement in that room. And I definitely think that there's a few guys there that, they might not be, week to week, but I think at least one of those guys every week can step up. And I feel good about the receiver room. I really do.
And who else, and lump in the tight ends, who would have guessed that Penn State in this win would have only had, let me see, 2 targets to tight ends in the entire game, both to Tyler Warren. Theo Johnson, no targets in the game. I mean, Penn State didn't use their tight ends, and I don't think Penn State really needs to run, 22 personnel out there until Ohio State and Michigan. I really don't. Like, Penn State should not have to open up their playbook until the Ohio State game.
No, I agree with you. It was a little surprising that, the tight ends really weren't involved, because I think the book on West Virginia going into this game was they don't really defend the tight ends well.
Yep.
So I thought that, Theo and Warren could potentially have big games in this one. But, they'll get their time. They're going to get plenty of looks. I think Theo did a great job in blocking. I think he's really improved as a blocker. So I think that's a nice little feather in his cap moving forward.
Sure.
Something Penn State will very much appreciate. But yeah, the tight ends, I could see them having big weeks next week because they'll be involved in this offense. They're way too important not to be.
Absolutely, Marty. Thoughts on wide receivers and tight ends as a whole, and then I guess quickly give me your thoughts as well on just your final thoughts on the offense. Anything else you wanted to mention, and then I'll go to Anthony for that as well.
No, nothing you guys didn't mention. I mean, I thought Malik McClain had a great game for Penn State. You get guys on occasion who maybe don't flash in practice, regardless of what the sport is, but then when game day comes, they step up in a big way. And Malik McClain might be that guy at receiver. I thought Liam Clifford, I agree completely with his blocking. He threw a very, very important downfield block on Malik McClain's touchdown catch. I think right now, through one game, it's very clear there is a separation, whatever you call it, a receiver, with Keandre Lambert-Smith, Trey Wallace, Liam Clifford, and Malik McClain. I think Amari Evans, didn't play outside of special teams on Saturday. Clearly some sort of injury issue there. So that's a factor too. But, Yeah, and the tight ends, I was also surprised by the lack of usage, but and I mentioned this on the board today, but Theo Johnson on a rewatch, man, his downfield blocking was huge in this game. So that's a big factor as well. But
Can I interrupt for quickly 1 second? Because for those who are
I'm
watching,
so sorry.
for those who are watching on YouTube,
I'm so
so
sorry.
Anthony is behind me for on the TV for about 30 seconds. But earlier when you were talking, I made a reaction face, and I'm sure you've seen it already, Marty.
I'm assuming that's the play that
Yeah,
just unfolded.
yeah,
Clemson
where
game.
Clemson
Yes,
just fumbled, and
yes.
Duke ran it like
Clemson is
80
doing all
yards,
that
60
to
yards back.
lose this game.
Yeah, so for those watching on YouTube, we were our faces were the reaction of Clemson fumbling potentially this game away. For those listening on the podcast, let's get back to our regularly scheduled segment here. What was your
For those
thoughts on?
listening to the podcast, friendly reminder: I'm the one idiot of the three who picked Clemson to win the ACC this year.
All right, back to regularly scheduled programming now. You're finishing your thoughts on Theo Johnson's blocking, I believe.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say it's clear to see that there was a huge emphasis on that over the summer. He's added a lot of size, a lot of muscle to his body, and that could be a real weapon this year for Penn State, even outside of the catching. Theo Johnson's ability to block. So, yeah, you want to see the tight ends involved more in the passing game. They didn't need it this past Saturday, and I don't hate that either because it was a good confidence builder. I feel for Liam Clifford, for Trey Wallace, for Malik McLean. Um, I still think Dante Cephas has more to give this team than we saw. He had the one catch, had the second catch on the
Yeah.
drop that would have been a touchdown. I know we've mentioned this before, but Cephas continues to scream to me a guy who really would have benefited being able to be here in the spring and wasn't able to because he had to finish up his credits at Kent
Yep.
State. But yeah, I think this wide receiver room is going to be okay. I know we mentioned it a lot. The amount of talent in that wide receiver room that we thought ultimately with the amount of talent there, things would work out. I think we're
Yep.
starting to see that, especially if Malik McLean does prove to kind of be one of these gamer types that, hey, you know what? Maybe he leaves some things to be desired on the practice field when the lights turn on Saturday night. You can count on McLean to step up for you. You're going to be okay. Because I would argue that maybe the most pleasant surprise of this entire game, offense, defense, or otherwise, was Malik McLean.
Absolutely. I guess the last thing we'll talk about the game, then just quickly give Big Ten Week 1 thoughts. Penn State's availability report this week. Probably should have mentioned this at the top. But kind of a long list this week, but the notable names, I mean, some of them we obviously knew about, some of them we didn't. But the notable names: Amin Vanover, Daquan Hardy, obviously Landon Tengwall was on that list. He retired. Smith Vilbert, we knew. Kazai was out, which was something that we were not expecting. But I don't know. We should say not expecting because James Franklin, either Tuesday or Wednesday, talked about how Kazai was out for a few weeks and just came back this past week for practice and was looking fresh out there. So it's not terribly shocking to me if he wasn't playing because he just didn't practice enough this camp. And then Amari Evans was questionable but did not record any snaps. As long as Kazai, I think, can get back out there for Penn State at DT, and Daquan Hardy is a big one as well. But as long as those two are healthy by the time Ohio State rolls around, I think the Nittany Lions will be fine on that front, injury-wise.
Yeah, it was surprising to see Hardy and Vanover out, and
Yeah.
hadn't really heard anything about that. So hope they're okay long term. I don't know what they're dealing with. Izard, I'm assuming it's just a carryover from his injuries from last season and this off season. So he was, it sounded like he was starting to get back into practices a little bit. So hopefully it's just that he wasn't really
Yeah.
100% yet, and they didn't want to risk like re-aggravating it.
Yeah.
But either way, you don't really need those guys going into Delaware. So if they're not 100%, you sit them out another week. Maybe hopefully you get those guys back for Illinois because I
Yeah.
think with that, they like to run the ball, so you want that D line at full strength if you can. But other than that, yeah, hope those guys are good and we'll get them back soon.
I guess not. He wasn't going to play, but Mason Robinson was also on the injury report. or availability report. So that'll be interesting to see if he continues to be on it. I do like these availability reports because now we kind of have an idea who's healthy, who's not, and whatnot. But Marty, any thoughts on the availability report before we go to the Big Ten stuff?
No, just to me, Hardy's the big one because I'm agree with you. I think Izzard, that was more of a direct result of him being a late participant to camp, essentially. So hopefully Daquan Hardy's okay because that's a guy who I think, is a lot more important in this team than people realize or want to admit. But yeah, if you can get healthy by Illinois, get their guys back, you're gonna feel okay.
All right, and I guess to really just wrap up West Virginia stuff, let's give Penn State offense and defense overall grades for this one. Um, just kind of just hand them out. Offensively, um, uh, Anthony, what's your offensive grade?
Offensively, I'll give it an A minus.
A
I think
minus?
that they did really well.
That's
Yeah,
fair.
I
That's fair.
mean, yeah, run game could have been a little better, but overall, I mean, really solid performance, especially from the passing game. So I feel like A minus. It wasn't a perfect performance, but I think A minus is fair.
Awesome. Marty, what's your grade for the offense?
I'll just go solid A. I think they left some points on the field, which tied more back to the kicking game than anything else. You would like to see the blocking maybe a little bit better, but all in all, first game of the season, first game of the new starting quarterback, I'll give it an A.
All right, I'm gonna give it an A as well, mostly for the reasons you guys said. Defensively, I'm gonna give Penn State overall here. I'm gonna go A minus, just for some of the things that need to be cleaned up. I think it was a rather dominant effort considering all those little things that do need to be cleaned up. Missed tackles, the run defense, but still, it was a pretty dominant effort, especially out of that first team. So give me an A minus for the defense, Anthony.
I'm gonna be a little more harsh. I'm gonna give it a B, and that's
Okay.
only because of the expectations that I have for this
Sure.
defense.
Sure.
They weren't up to that standard. But at the end of the day, they only gave up 7 points with their first team defense and 15 points overall. So
Yep.
you really can't be too unhappy with it. But there's definitely room for improvement. So I'm gonna give it a B.
And Marty.
Yeah, I'm similar to Anthony again. Part of this is your expectations. Part of this is the fact that I think the defensive tackles and linebackers both had a terrible game.
Sure.
Man, I don't even. I'll give it a B minus, maybe even a C plus. I just don't feel. I thought the defense overall. It's weird. I thought overall the defense did not play well Saturday night. Yet they only give us 7 points, which is a testament to where. And again, part of it is the expectations. You expect this defense to be an elite unit, right?
Sure.
They did not play well against West Virginia, and their starters held a Power Five opponent to 7 points.
Sure.
And you come out of it kind of feeling down a bit. So that's just very telling on where this team is. But yeah, I'll go B minus, largely because I thought the linebackers and defensive tackles definitely left a lot to be desired out there with the play.
I may be a little bit of a loose grader on this one today, but I think I'm just chopping it up, some of the stuff for week one. But yeah, I mean, I think those grades are also very much acceptable. I think I wouldn't have a problem with anybody grading this Penn State defense from an A to a C plus, just because it's all about how you look at these things. Definitely the expectations, but at the end of the day, first team defense at 7 points, 230 yards. There's not much you could really complain about, but when we nitpick it, there's obviously a lot to complain about. It wasn't a pretty effort at all times. They looked like that elite defense sometimes. Other times they did not look like that elite defense. But I think after they made those adjustments at halftime, it was pretty solid overall. The good news for them is also they don't have to face, I don't think, any other dual threat quarterbacks until, I don't even know who's going to be the next dual threat quarterback they face.
I know nothing about Delaware's quarterbacks or potentially this weekend. I have no idea.
Well, mine is Delaware's quarterback. I mean, I don't know. The next time they'll face a true dual threat quarterback, which may be beneficial for Penn State. All right, quickly, let's just talk about the Big Ten. Compared to the rest of the Big Ten, Penn State had the best win of anybody this week. I mean, Minnesota's win over Nebraska was more of Nebraska finding another way to lose. Michigan State beat Central Michigan 31-7, but wasn't really impressive. Michigan against East Carolina, I don't think you can take anything away from that considering all the circumstances. Michigan looked to really just be going through the motions. Ohio State was not impressive at all. Defensively was solid, but strong. But it's Indiana. Wisconsin against Buffalo looked solid. That was traditional Wisconsin football. Iowa failed to score 25 points. So that's one, negative for Brian Ferentz this season, in which he has to score like 25 points on average to keep his job. Purdue lost to Fresno State. Maryland took care of business against Townsend. Illinois survived a scare from Toledo, and then Rutgers trounced Northwestern 24-7. Not many impressive performances really across the league. I mean, Penn State was, I think, number one, and then it may be Rutgers number two, just because Rutgers truly dominated that game. But Northwestern's just so bad this year. I mean, if you're a Penn State fan, you have to feel good about where the Nittany Lions sit in this conference after 1 week. I mean, they are most definitely, after 1 week, one of the top three teams. And based off how they performed in week one, I would say Penn State would beat Ohio State this week. But that we have to wait a couple more weeks for that, and that's perfectly fine. And Ohio State's going to be a different team by then. But I guess, Marty, where are you, just the Big Ten as a whole, where Penn State kind of falls in everything after 1 week? Obviously, it's only 1 week, but that Ohio State game, I think, is the most shocking. Ohio State, a team that usually dominates these type of games against Indiana's and lower Power Five, just Kyle McCord didn't look good. The offense looked out of sync the entire day, but now the defense was good. But again, it's Indiana.
Yeah, I can't say I feel any different about the Big Ten as a whole coming out of the week than I did going in. I still think Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan are the top three. I get what you're saying about Ohio State. I really do. But if you're an Ohio State fan, I think you would much rather see the offense kind of him haw around week one and you still win by three scores. Then you win by three scores with the score being, 45-21 or something, where you're left questioning your defense still. So
Sure, absolutely.
my thing is with Ohio State, there's too much talent on that offense. They'll get it together. I know that's getting the big talking point, especially until they play Notre Dame in a few weeks. But yeah, I feel no different about the conference as a whole than I did coming into the week. I will say I think, Ohio State's offense is probably not going to be quite as good as you anticipated. But if their defense is potentially slightly better than you thought, in the end, it's kind of a wash. But yeah,
It,
I still think it's those three schools and everybody else.
yeah, that's absolutely the case. It's just Ohio State's going to get it together to a degree, but I mean, Penn State looked much better than Ohio State did, and Penn State had many of the same, changes that Ohio State did this offseason. So, and Penn State faced a tougher opponent. Now that doesn't mean Penn State's gonna be the better team all year, but just from a national standpoint and a Big Ten standpoint, there's no reason to believe that if Penn State takes care of their business against the teams they should beat, that they can't beat an Ohio State team or Michigan team this year, and that they're one of the. I think what I'm trying to say best is I think Penn State came out this week, and out of most teams, legitimately looked the part of a top 8 team in the country and a team that is a true college football contender. Because a lot of teams, even against FCS opponents, didn't really impress you this week, in my opinion. Anthony, thoughts overall, Big Ten?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Overall, I think Penn State did exactly what they needed to do. They looked the part, and Ohio State, I think they'll be fine. I'm surprised how little they got their star receivers involved in the game, and I think the biggest storyline from that game, in my opinion, more so than the quarterbacks, is the offensive line. I didn't really get to watch a whole lot of that game. Luckily, my tailgate that I was at, shout out to my boys, they had a TV with a whole setup, so we were able to watch a lot of the earlier games, and Ohio State was one of them. And yeah, McCord was constantly under pressure, and he was constantly running around, and that offensive line is going to be an issue for them. So if Penn State can get that, they can get consistent pressure in that game, they'll have a shot, because they're going to send Chop, they're going to send Abdul Carter, they're going to send Adiza Isaac at McCord or Devin Brown if we're starting by that point, and they're going to try to rattle them. So,
Yeah.
I think Ohio State at the end of the day is going to be fine. Their defense looks solid, but yeah, it's definitely not an encouraging sign for them that their offense was only able to put up 23 points on an Indiana team that frankly is not good.
I think what really puts into a question is what problem for Ohio State is can they get their offense and offensive line going by September 23rd? Because right now Notre Dame could very well beat this Ohio State team if this is the Ohio State offense that
Hmm.
is on that's going to show up on the 23rd. If Ohio State gets their offense fixed, I still think the Buckeyes win that game by, you know, potentially double digits. But can they have the offense going by September 23rd? If not, that's going to be a close game. It was a close game in Columbus last year, and I think it could be another nail biter this year potentially.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I 100% agree with you.
I don't
We
know. You
before
guys
we
are putting a lot of confidence into performances against Navy and Tennessee State. I don't know. Even if Ohio State comes out and him haws around, I still don't. I just don't. I don't know. I don't think it was Notre Dame. Like, do you really trust Notre Dame's offense to be able to put up 20 plus against Ohio State? Because I don't know if I do. Like, I get they have Jack
I,
Hartman now,
yeah, I mean,
but like
I trust Sam
but
Hartman more than
they
I
have
trust.
or Sam Hartman, but they have no receivers. They have no wide receivers on the team.
It is. I know it is. It is still going to be tough for Notre Dame, but I mean, I think ultimately it's if Ohio State's offense doesn't get it going, all it's going to take for Ohio State to lose a game this year is their defense not having a good day one time a year once this year, and that's very much possible. I mean, Ohio State's not going to keep obviously the likes of Penn State to 7 or 14 points. If Ohio State's going to beat Penn State this year, Ohio State's going to have to score what 35, 40 points.
yeah.
If they're going to beat Michigan later this year, they're going to have to score 35, 40 points. Wisconsin could be a game later this year if Ohio State doesn't get together. That could be a challenging one for the Buckeyes if Wisconsin is able to, look more like the Wisconsin we've known in the past than last year. But yeah, I think Ohio State comes out this week as the big question mark. I'm still going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I think they're going to, be just fine. And at the end of the season, they're going to be 11-1, 10-2 at worst. But yeah, they're definitely, I think, the biggest question mark in the Big Ten after 1 week, just because of their ceiling and how they looked overall in week 1.
Yeah. Now, before we either get out of here
No,
or
yeah,
transition
we
to
should
the
get out.
next
Should get
thing,
out.
we have to talk about that Nebraska Minnesota game for just a
Yeah,
minute.
yeah.
I don't know if you guys watched that game at all,
I do
but
cover Minnesota
man,
recruiting.
As the resident Matt Roll hater, that game made my heart smile.
no, I mean it was just
Jeff
man,
Sims is
like
still not a very good quarterback.
He is not.
he's
He is
not,
My
still
takeaway.
terrible.
I know a lot of
he's
people
not,
wanted to
and
think that it was just him at Georgia, being at Georgia Tech, where there's not a ton of talent around him. But
It's
Jeff
not
Sims
at
is
all.
legitimately he cannot make reads at all on a consistent basis.
that the memes on Twitter were fantastic because they were all just about Scott Frost. Somehow he got roped right back into this, but it was a Scott Frost type of loss. And
Um,
just Nebraska just continue, like you said earlier, Dylan. Nebraska just continues to find ways to lose games,
yeah,
and like it's one score games. Like
yeah.
it was like
It's
the
like
last 5 years they have like
26.
20. It's
Yeah.
like 25 or 26 one score losses in the last 5 years. That's like that feels impossible.
I
Like
I will say though with Minnesota, Daniel Jackson. I mean that catch in the end zone
that catch
was
was unreal.
Yeah,
phenomenal.
that's catch of the year material. I know we're on the
Yeah,
way, but that's gonna be tough to top,
I mean,
especially when you consider the game situation and everything. That's gonna be
yeah,
really hard to
to
top.
somehow get that toe tap down on, on on that pass, and I'm a guy who thinks highly of Ethan Kaliakmanis. I think he has a lot of good high potential, and he didn't have his best night, and that wasn't a great throw, but by any means. But the concentration that Jackson had on that and be able to get that toe tap down was phenomenal. Minnesota's in trouble though. If that's their rushing attack this year, Minnesota's in a lot of trouble. But Nebraska, I think,
As much trouble as Nebraska.
like, is that Nebraska defense real, or is that Minnesota, struggling to make up for some of the losses they had?
We're
since
going
last
to
year.
find out on Saturday when against that Colorado offense. We're going to find out real fast if that Nebraska
Yeah.
defense is real or not.
And we'll find out if that Colorado offense, how real that is. Colorado, me and Anthony were talking before we went live, obviously outside the Big Ten, but that's going to be a really intriguing team to watch just because you look at their schedule based off how they played. 6 wins, 7 wins is very much possible. I don't know if they're going to have the depth and the talent overall to go up against some of the better teams on their schedule, but yeah, that was a really impressive win by Colorado as well. Deion Sanders, definitely,
Yeah.
if people weren't believing, they're believing now.
Yeah, no, real quick. I was talking to one of my friends, and one of the things he said was he thought our defense didn't play very well. And I said, man, if you want to see better defense, watch that TCU Colorado game from earlier today, because that was just defense optional. Like there was just it was so laughably bad on defense. It was electric to watch, but oh my goodness,
I mean, talking about
zero defense on either side.
I can't wait for that USC Colorado game at the end of the month. That the over under on that may be 100 points because there's going to be
Good. I
the
mean,
defense
would
is
take
optional.
over.
That is defense
game-
optional.
I'm not convinced either of those teams can hold each other under 50.
yeah, that game could end like 55-52. Like
CJ
it really
Williams
could.
and Sanders might throw for 1,000 yards that game combined. CJ,
Yeah, no, they could.
Caleb Williams
They
and
really could.
Shedeur Sanders may throw for.
And like kudos to Shedeur Sanders, but dude, Dylan Edwards is a freaking stud, man.
He's a monster.
Yeah,
Notre
Dylan
Dame
Edwards.
lost a really good one when he flipped to Colorado.
Now,
Yeah.
poor Notre Dame. Shucks, you hate to see it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Colorado does the rest of the year. But we should wrap it up. We're going already on another hour. So, thank you everybody for listening to 9% of the Penn State 365 podcast. We are going to have these recaps up much quicker than we did this week. Again, with the holiday weekend, a little bit tougher to get it up fast, especially with the night game. But we'll get these up quicker. We'll be back at it Wednesday night recorded. We'll post on Thursday morning of our preview for Penn State versus Delaware. Shouldn't be a terribly long preview. Penn State should take care of business in that one quite easily. If it's close, there's going to be a lot to talk about next Sunday. But until then, everybody enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy the start of the NFL season on Thursday, but we'll talk to you then before then as well. But any final words, guys, on week 1 of the college football season? All right. Well, until next time, everybody, enjoy your week, and we'll talk to you soon.